right. So, we don't have any baptisms this weekend, but we have a bunch coming up in the near future. So today I want us to take a little time to reflect and refresh a baptismal principle or two, because both the first reading and the gospel centered around the importance and significance of water. Our first reading was the book of Job. Very difficult book to read under any circumstance. And the reading specifically that we heard today was God speaking, and he was saying that he alone controls the seas and the oceans. The very borders of the world obey him, not us. Now that's a pretty sensible thing to hear from God. But it's more significant when you take a little bit of context into account. Because the thing is, the ancient Jews, the people producing these books of the Old Testament, as a general rule, they were pretty afraid of water. They were a desert people. They were not particularly strong swimmers or sailors. So over time, water became a rather significant symbol to them. Water represented just how dangerous the natural world really is. Water equals chaos, uncertainty, and death. And if you're on the water for any reason, then you know that you are at the mercy of the weather and divine providence. Because what else can you do? Yell at the thunderstorm? That's probably not going to help any. Like most of you, I spent my entire childhood not being afraid of water. We all have swimming lessons. Swimming is a major recreational activity for us, at least during the summer months. Just people in this day and age were generally not afraid of water, which is fine. It wasn't until many years later that I realized that it is a rational fear to recognize that water can, in fact, be a somewhat dangerous thing. It was my birthday, and Mom broke out the home movies, which is very often bad news for me. Once on my birthday, I found out that my mom and dad signed me up for medical experiments as a baby. Can you believe that? Don't answer that. So on this particular birthday, she broke out the home movies, and one little part of those home movies was just little 10 or 11-year-old me swimming in a swimming pool alone while we were on vacation. And I was horrified to watch this video because swimming was a generous way of phrasing that. It's more accurate to say that I was drowning very slowly. Like, I would pop up and break the surface of the water and take a breath, and as soon as my hands stopped moving, I'd immediately sink in the water, and then I'd take another stroke long enough to just get me above the water again. So a strong swimmer kind of hovers around the surface of the water, and I was doing like a heartbeat shape, just across the pool. And all I could think of was, man, I was a terrible swimmer. Why did my parents let me near water in the first place? Maybe parenting in the 90s was just more laissez-faire. I don't know. But the point is, now I kind of get it a little bit better that water is potentially dangerous. But the symbolism doesn't stop there, because water doesn't just equal death, water equals life. We need water for ourselves, our crops, our animals. Water, let's face it, is a pretty unique thing. We depend upon it, but at the same time, we should kind of fear and respect it at the same time. So with that said, think about what happens at a baptism. The baby goes into the water, sometimes literally, most of the time figuratively, as the priest pours the water over its head. And that is supposed to be reminiscent of drowning. It is supposed to remind us of death. But of course, what happens next? The baby rises up out of the water, from death to life. And none of that is literal. It is sacramental. It is on the level of faith. We die to a life of sin. We die to a level of life where we are vulnerable to nothing more nor less than the forces of nature. We rise to new life. We rise and we belong to Christ above all. And once that happens, we will never again be entirely vulnerable to the chaotic waters of creation. So on that note, let's turn to the gospel. Jesus and his disciples are on a little boat in the Sea of Galilee, which is not really that big, but it is very likely the biggest body of water any of these people have experienced, unless they saw the Mediterranean Sea. So when the thunderstorm hit them, they were very understandably afraid. Their lives were, in fact, in great danger. But oddly enough, Jesus showed absolutely no fear. And when they finally shook him awake, all he did was say, "Quiet, be still." And bizarrely, the storm and the wind obeyed him and backed off. And that is normally not how that works. Mother Nature does not care how loud you yell. But as usual, it's a little different with Jesus, because through his divine nature, Jesus is above the waters of creation and any other foul weather that he might encounter. We hear in the book of Job, after all, that it is God and God alone who commands the sea and puts forth the limits of the earth. That means Jesus. And for all of us and for all of the baptized, we in fact inherit a small piece of that power. We don't get the whole thing, of course. When you're baptized, you don't become a wizard. You don't become Storm from X-Men. You can't literally control the weather. No one can. But we do receive a little piece of that power, because when we are baptized, we are no longer entirely subject to the forces of nature, because whatever happens to us in this life in our physical bodies, we belong to Christ. And Christ will protect us from that which truly seeks to harm us, to harm our souls. And once we understand that, then we can move forward in life with great confidence, knowing that the most important part of us truly is invulnerable. And we have God himself as our holy and powerful protector. The first official step to that process and making that happen is plunging into the waters of baptism. And that should be frightening. That should be a little scary, because it is only by diving into the waters of death that we rise once more to new life in Christ.